Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for inviting me also, and good afternoon to you all. I must say that when I got the invitation to say something on this forum, and I was asked to tell something about the European viewpoint, that I was kind of surprised. I'm not an economist, I'm not a political scientist. I work on history. That's one problem, and the other problem is indeed to say something about the European viewpoint. I mean, if Europe would always speak with one voice, that would make my job lots easier. But we all know that this is not the case. So what I did is, from a more historical perspective also, have a look at different opinions, different perceptions on this One Belt, One Road that are in Europe. So that is not the European viewpoint, but some remarks, some opinions that are going on in that part of the globe. So of course, as already mentioned, the term One Belt, One Road, that brings to mind the so-called Silk Road, which it has been said was actually a term that was only created in the second half of the 19th century, and that has always been many roads. In the end, of course, linking the Roman Empire with China, or China with the Roman Empire, as you may have it, but it was definitely not one road. And I guess the One Belt, One Road will not be one road either. I will try to make that point more clear. Just to say a general thing, we all know that since 2008, European economies are suffering or struggling to overcome the economic crisis. European countries are suffering to overcome also the financial crisis. And generally speaking, I would say, by any fair argument, any initiative that would help to bring us back economically on track would be a good initiative. So in this sense, I guess the initiative can only be welcomed. At this stage, however, I would say that for Europe in general, being at the completely other end of this fantastic belt, the direct economic implications are not really that clear, and that public opinion in Europe, contrary probably to what is the case in Central Asian countries, but that public opinion in Europe may hardly have heard of the initiative. It's not our first concern of the public opinion anyway. If you look at policymakers, then of course if you see that we are struggling with economic and financial crisis, the One Belt, One Road initiative is likely to be perceived, especially not as an economic, but as a political, or for its political implications. Along with such initiatives as the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, which has been already mentioned also earlier, this One Belt, One Road initiative, I would say, is especially perceived as a sign of a more proactive role of China in the global world, on the global stage. Now that economic power it has always been shifting. I mean, it was European economic power and it shifted to American economic power, and now it's shifting again. I mean, this is development. At this instance, I would say for many Europeans, One Belt, One Road is just a sign, an illustration of shifting balance in the world. And so also has political implications, not only economical ones. Now, in a moment that Europe is suffering and that there is Euroscepticism in many more countries, growing Euroscepticism, that we see that China is, at the one hand, dealing with the European Union as a group, on the other hand, is also dealing state to state. On the other hand, has also more recently launched the 1+16 framework, in which especially the Central European and Eastern European countries are focused. This kind, of course, may, in a situation of public opinion that is growing Eurosceptic, be seen, of course, as a possible threat to European unity as such. Again, more political than actually economic at this moment. Of course, from the Chinese side, I would say this balancing of power and this more proactive role is a very natural initiative, I would say, in the sense that, well, China has been allowed as member of the World Trade Organization. European countries have granted China the Olympic Games, the World Expo, Port of the World. And now, of course, I mean, there is discussion, will China be granted the market economy status or not? What about more say for China in institutions as the International Monetary Fund, etc.? So in all these circumstances, again, the One Belt, One Road is, I would say, in public opinion and also among policymakers, not all of them, of course, but this is a perception that this One Belt, One Road is a political more than a economic issue at this moment. But then again, as just said also by the first speaker of this second session in the afternoon, the fact that European countries have decided to join the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Infrastructure Bank, we will have to get used to that name, is a good sign. So it's not all black or all white. I mean, there's really a kind of a balancing of opinions there. I would, as I have to say something about Europe, I would like to quote a saying by the EU ambassador to the People's Republic of China and Mongolia, His Excellency Hans Dietmar Schweizgut, and he said the following: at the 16th summit, and I take it from the journal EU-China Observer in the latest issue, just a few months ago, where he said, at the 16th summit held in Beijing in 2013, we agreed on a EU-China 2020 agenda for strategic cooperation. The agenda is a blueprint for a further development of three pillars, and this is important, I think, of three pillars that hold up our relationship: the strategic political pillar, the economy and trade pillar, and not least the pillar of people-to-people exchanges. The agenda, he goes on, will for years to come constitute the main document on which the EU-China summit and the about 60 other regular high-level and senior officials dialogues that underpin the summit will be based on. An ambitious bilateral investment agreement, which is currently under negotiation, would unlock the enormous potential of two-way investment for China and the EU. In a context of slower Chinese growth, it would help create an open and predictable environment, unquote. I think, but this statement, why I take it, is indeed because it shows the interconnectedness of three pillars. You have the economic level, you have the political level, and you have the people-to-people, in broader sense, the cultural level, which is also important. And it shows indeed also that EU and China are willing to cooperate on a win-win basis. Now, in contrast, I would say, to Europe, that is, as I said, at the completely outer end of this so famous new economic belt, the situation will, of course, gradually grow. It will first affect, it has been also mentioned today, the Central Asian countries, and gradually spread to the West. And economic development will, of course, further integrate different countries in this economic project. But again, I would say there is not only economy. It has been mentioned also by our colleague of Moscow State University. There is also the quality of what you invest. I mean, there is not only what you trade, and there is also education. There is also, it has been said, information network, and so on. So this is things that have to be taken into consideration. Also, economic development will have impact on the advancement of regional security, development cooperation, and in this sense, I would say China has already, before initiated the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it was the first organization, let's say, of global governance initiated by China. So they have their merits there already. And the One Belt, One Road policy that favors growth, trade, investment, and regional integration, if we see all these things, also raises hopes for the fact that these efforts, these investments, could also lead to improvement of overall stability in the regions where the belt and the maritime Silk Road is supposed to go through, which have problematic tensions, politically speaking. So actually it also, I mean, collaboration there, investment there, economically has also, of course, there its positive, possibly possible political merits. Speaking of global government, or global governance, sorry, the successful implementation of the new Silk Road strategy, the most ambitious yet, one could say, in China's era of reform, requires financial, institutional, and policy support not only from China, but also, of course, it has been mentioned, of the countries along the road. This means, of course, collaboration. This means that actually the Silk Road, the new Silk Road, or whatever you may call it, is actually an umbrella concept. An umbrella concept under which many other interrelated projects, economical, financial, etc., educational, will have to find a place. And for all these different fields, under this big umbrella project, we will need talks. We will need people-to-people talk. People-to-people talk also involving, of course, cultural qualities. Also here, just developing by spending money is not the whole picture. Also history teaches us that there is more in life and in development than merely money. So, okay, this One Belt, One Road initiative has far-reaching, or will have far-reaching impact, not only on promoting regional and international trade and economic cooperation, but also in rule building in the international system, is obvious. Taking into account the current shift of the international system, this opens also positive aspects. This One Belt, One Road should therefore, I think, not be seen as one more example of what is so often called the China threat. It should not be. It will, of course, enhance, definitely, China's influence in regional and international affairs, obviously. But this will indeed only be possible through collaboration, through talks, through people-to-people dialogue. The weakness in this sense of, one could sometimes also in the European public opinion and political publications, you see that the One Belt, One Road idea is maybe threatened, maybe jeopardized by ethnic tensions, by cultural tensions, and so on, political tensions in the different countries where it is supposed to go through. Also there, this should not be. I mean, looking for solutions to build up economically will also inquire other aspects of building up, and may actually be also there have its positive sides. So it may help actually in peace building, if it is done properly. And As mentioned by the Chinese leadership, the Silk Road concept, and it has also been mentioned by the previous speaker, is a blueprint for China's ambitions to connect 3 different continents, namely also Africa included. And for many of the countries involved, China might indeed be perceived as providing them with an opportunity to reverse economic stagnation or decline. In this sense, one could see One Belt, One Road as one more sign of the so-called China model. Increased linkages with China will also mean greater leverage of China in the whole of Eurasia and in Africa. And this, again, in these countries will lead to more influence of China. And this then, of course, may then again be seen by Europe and the United States as a possible challenge to their so-called normative power. But this, of course, is again a matter of discussion. And also here I would say, and this is also something history has learned us, we may not forget that the contacts, economic, political, and cultural contacts that the implementation of this new Silk Road will have, that is, of course, will change all the countries through which the belt is going, but through contact, history has taught us China will change as much as the rest will be changed by China. So, in this sense, I would like to conclude. Thank you.